The year is 2014. Vine is at an all-time high, gay people started being cool, and most importantly, people were cranking that Soulja Boy. And it's during this time that a small anime named Tokyo Ghoul started weaseling its way onto the internet. First it infected Tumblr, then it was anime conventions, and finally it took Hot Topic from us. Tokyo Ghoul is a series that needs no introduction. Adapted by Studio Pierrot, the iconic studio behind shows like Naruto and Bleach, Tokyo Ghoul is a story that follows our titular character, Mr. Tokyo Ghoul himself, Ken Kaneki, a college student on a pussy quest who ends up in the emergency room after his date dies while trying to eat him. Just not in the sexual way. It's during this time that a doctor decides to make the highly illegal move of transplanting Kaneki's date's organs inside of him to fix up the damage. The only issue is that this girl was a ghoul, meaning that her appearance resembles that of a human, but she can only consume two things, those being human flesh and coffee. And therein lies our problem. We have the typical everyday Joe who has to grapple with the fact that he has to violently kill and eat people all because he wanted some pussy. By the end of 2014, Tokyo Ghoul was inescapable. Whether it be this complete banger of an opening, the hot girls, or its edgy aesthetic and sick fights, within no time this series became iconic. But for all the hype and popularity surrounding Tokyo Ghoul, there was just one issue. You see, the anime kinda blows. You see, within the Tokyo Ghoul community, there seems to be a split between the anime watchers and the manga readers, the anime being viewed more as the Diet Coke experience of Tokyo Ghoul, with the manga being the Jack Daniel's Coca-Cola. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could the studio behind shows like Naruto and Naruto again ruin a show like Tokyo Ghoul? Well, ladies and gentlemen, to answer that question, we need to start all the way at the top with Season 1. Released in 2014, as stated earlier, Tokyo Ghoul Season 1 covers chapters 1 through 66 of the manga. Now, that doesn't sound half bad, right? A very achievable goal with the perfect cutoff before the series really hits the ground running for Season 2. Except there's just one issue. Season 1 is 12 episodes long. Not 12-hour-long episodes, no. 12 24-minute episodes long. So how could an adaptation speed of roughly 5.5 chapters per episode be realistically achieved? Did they cut content, maybe dumb down some character building, or did they just cram it all in there and call it a day? Well, the answer is it wasn't, and yes, all three of those. Let's start with the most obvious problem, the pacing. Exhibit A, the first episode of the anime, covers chapters 1 through 5. To break this down into actual content, the episode starts with the introductions of Rize and Jason, this leading to the audience being introduced to ghouls and what they're all about. After that, we get a scene of Kaneki and Hide hanging out at Onteku while Kaneki preps for his date with Rize. Kaneki goes out with Rize, Rize attempts to eat him, and she dies, leading to Kaneki being rushed to the emergency room and having surgery. And right there, the perfect frame to end the episode on. We've been introduced to the world, a handful of characters, grasped the concept of ghouls and what they do, we had a climax in Rize attacking Kaneki, and we had the perfect twist to end an episode on. Except this isn't where the episode ends. No, okay. Everything I've mentioned up to this point takes up only about half of the episode's runtime. Instead, the rest of the episode adapts 4 more chapters. These 4 chapters being chapters 2 and 3, which focus on his existential crisis and attempted death after realizing that he now has to kill and eat people, his coincidental run-in with Nishio in chapters 4 and 5, and Toka saving him, fighting with Nishio, and then beating up Kaneki in chapter 5. And a good half of these chapters' contents get moved to episode 2 because the first episode needed to be cool. Oh, and if you thought that was bad, just wait until we get to season 2. Now, stupidly complicated number talk aside, the actual issue here is that the DNA of Tokyo Ghoul was being changed even in its earlier episodes, changing the anime from being psychology-based with little battles intertwined to being a shonen battle anime with bits of psychology embedded into it. Whoa, calm down there, Root A, I still have to bitch about season 1 for another few pages. A wise man once said that anime is only as enjoyable as its best characters. Without good characters, a show can fail to be captivating. Yet good characters can make even the most lackluster of anime start to pop. That wise man was me. I said that, okay? So how did Pierrot ruin Tokyo Ghoul's characters? Okay, come on, we are 4 pages into the script. You already know that the answer is cut content. I've done a lot of talk on season 1, so let's just go with an easy example here, okay? Tsukiyama. Introduced at the very end of episode 3, Tsukiyama is the star of episodes 4 and 5, having so much swag and pizzazz that it's hard not to love the dude. I mean, just look at his suit, okay? He is brimming with swag. Come on. If you're wondering where I'm going with this, let's just spit it out already. Within 2 anime episodes, Tsukiyama goes from meeting Kaneki, to being obsessed with Kaneki, to drugging and kidnapping Kaneki, and then kidnapping another girl to lure Kaneki in. Now, how does the manga handle this? Actually, like, the same fucking way, okay? But I think that the biggest difference here would be the amount of time we spend with Tsukiyama. For example, within the manga, these 2 episodes take up 13 chapters of content. These chapters, along with the unadapted start of chapter 32, actually characterize Tsukiyama to be a slightly more cunning man than how the anime portrays him. So how exactly does the anime portray him? Well, if what I described to you earlier sounds like some shit that Bowser would pull to get his hands on Peach, then there you go. As I mentioned, he isn't too different in the manga, however this extra breathing room and slight added characterization makes him feel the tiniest bit more like a real character rather than a cartoon villain. Look, the point is, I could keep going here, but I still have another season to cover, okay? And you know what? All in all, season 1 wasn't half bad, it just wasn't half good. And with season 1 being canon all around, there's not a ton I can actually complain about. It's just ever so slightly different from the manga in ways that peeve me. And honestly, for all that I've opened my little yap hole and bitched about the smallest things regarding season 1, it still did so much right. Whether it be the soundtrack, the fight scenes, or sadistic motherfuckers like Mato and Jason really being brought to life here, season 1 had a lot going for it, and what it did deliver on, it delivered like a goddamn hot and ready, okay? Honestly, there's not much to genuinely complain about here, just a few minor issues involving pacing, tone, a bunch of fucking nerd talk, and so on. But the story was relative to the manga, and all in all, season 1 is a good experience. But you know what I can complain about? You know what isn't canon? Tokyo Ghoul Route A, aka Tokyo Ghoul Season 2, is the biggest piece of dog shit I have ever laid my eyes on. If Season 1 was the Diet Coke of Tokyo Ghoul, then Route A is the goddamn Walmart brand cola itself. Now, Route A is very different from the manga counterpart of Tokyo Ghoul. In fact, Route A is where we start to see Tokyo Ghoul truly take shape into the battle shonen that Season 1 was planting seeds for. Look, if Studio Naruto over here really wanted to create their own story, I can't really fault them for that. Something like a 2003 FMA or a Hellsing, whatever. Like, yes, that would inherently make it a failure of an adaptation of the manga story, but if they could pull it off, this video's title would be like, how to write a Tokyo Ghoul fanfiction or some shit. But it's not. This video is called How to Ruin an Anime, okay? If I could dumb down Route A's biggest problem into just one sentence, it would be that this show only focuses on fights. Exhibit A, Episode 1. To dumb down the entire plot of episode 1, we start the episode with Kaneki leaving the torture room from the end of season 1 before noticing that Toka is getting her ass whooped by her brother Ayato, a member of the organization Aogiri. After this, Kaneki saves Toka from Ayato and fights him. Kind of. You see, Kaneki doesn't really try here, but anyways, upon understanding that Ayato joined Aogiri to gain power, Kaneki decides to join with them as well. Intersplice this with a few fight scenes of Aogiri and the CCG and you get episode 1. Don't see my point here? Okay, Exhibit B, Episode 4. Aogiri, including Kaneki and Ayato, break into the CCG's building named Cochlea. Anyways, Kaneki stumbles across some guy named Shachi and gets his ass beat in about 2 minutes. And apparently, this was so triggering that Kaneki unleashes a new power-up and goes genuinely insane in the span of 20 seconds. You know, Kaneki, the guy who endured multiple episodes of psychological torture, yeah, he goes insane simply by getting punched a bit too hard by a random character he just met. Okay, one more. Episode 5, okay? Episode 5 is essentially entirely made up of fights, 4 of them to be exact. The first is Ayato versus Shinohara, and this is the most nothing burger of a fight you will ever see. Now, why is it so stale and boring? Well, to put it bluntly, I do not know shit about either of these characters. You see, we are 5 episodes into the second season of the anime, and we hardly have seen Ayato do anything outside of fight people and be a massive fucking asswipe. I don't know shit about him or the other guy, and I really couldn't care less about this fight. Same goes for Juzo versus Nashiro and Corona, okay? The only exception here is that, unlike Ayato, Juzo brings genuine hype to the screen, so at least I can give him a slight pass there. Then we move on to have Kakuja Kaneki cleaning up Ayato's fight for him, and this is where we finally have something to care about. And no, it's not because this fight is cool. I care about this fight because it shows us how mentally fucked Kaneki has become since the events of Season 1 and Jason's torture, showing us that he's genuinely going insane and turning his back on his upstanding morals from Season 1. We end the episode off with a slight altercation between Amon and Kaneki, this being the best part of the episode due to their confrontation in Season 1 doing all of the heavy lifting here. Every good moment from this episode only works due to Season 1's initial focus on psychology and morals. Other than that, every instance of fighting within this episode is boring as fuck. In case you have yet to understand, the issue here is that Route A does not give a shit about its characters. Before episode 5 with Kaneki going insane, the most we got of him is him committing baseless war crimes, him fighting people, and him sitting alone in a room and drinking coffee. Almost no actual words of substance come out of his little meat flaps, okay? And we see him do practically nothing. Now, don't get me wrong, there is perspective to be gained in witnessing just how insane Kaneki's going with his panic attacks and how much he's willing to betray his morals, but at the same time, Kaneki as a character has been reduced to almost nothing other than a man with PTSD. And not very well written PTSD like a character like Reiner in Attack on Titan. Rather, just random scenes pop up to remind us that Kaneki's fucking emo. Now, once again, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with having Kaneki become a character who undergoes change in his character and morals. I'm not complaining that he's different from Season 1, rather my complaint here is that what Route A does with Kaneki is turn him into an edgelord with little to no substance. Now, contrast this to manga Kaneki. How are we introduced to him? Kaneki here is ruthless. He goes on to not only have a full-on fight with Ayato, but makes Ayato into a complete bitch. Hell, he not only threatens but goes through with half-killing Ayato, meaning breaking half of the bones within his entire body, and spoilers, but Ayato does not do shit in the manga after this. In fact, Aogiri? Aogiri who? Kaneki does not join that shit. In fact, Kaneki hangs out with Hinami, he visits the 20th ward, he goes to Anteku to talk with Yoshimura. None of all that emo fuck that Route A makes him out to be. The most faithful look at Kaneki that Route A gives us is in episode 12, the final episode. It deals with Hide and Kaneki reuniting for the first time since this started all back in Season 1. It's after this that Hide collapses from his wounds in battle and Kaneki then carries him to safety. Everything here works perfectly. The episode goes slow to cap off the season, deals with twists and turns, and puts an end to Anteku as it is. It is a genuinely good episode through and through. Though signs of a calmer Kaneki had started appearing towards the end of episode 7, I do have one issue here, and that's that this change is way too drastic. You can't show me Kaneki committing baseless war crimes and cannibalizing a Kakuja, and then turn around 4 episodes later and expect me not to question anything. Route A fucking loves backstories. In fact, Route A loves them so much that it's no wonder the studio behind Naruto made this anime, okay? Look, there is nothing wrong with backstories at all, period, okay? But the issue with Route A comes in the fact that practically any time that a character has been lacking in development or we have no reason to care about them, Route A slaps a nice backstory-sized band-aid right on that shit and expects it to work. For example, my girl Akira Mato, okay? She's the daughter of that one dipshit in Season 1 who really liked to just fuck with ghouls and even use the remains of Hinami's father to lure her in and attempt to kill her. Look, with the way that Route A was going, Akira would have been a boring character with a bitchy attitude and nothing more. You see, realizing this problem, Studio Naruto decided to flesh her out by including scenes of her drunk, relying off of her connection with her father from Season 1, and you guessed it, she lays out her entire backstory in the latter half of episode 6. Except I don't give a shit. Put her on screen more, flesh her out naturally, and I will naturally give a shit. Except none of this matters because she doesn't matter after this episode. Juzo, a great guy. I fucking love this guy. And if you want me to be blunt about why, simply put, he's edgy looking, he's high energy, and he's a hype little goofball. And that's about all I can tell you about Juzo. Oh wait, and he was abused as a child, okay? Something that we only know because Piero needed us to care about him and thus sloppily adapted a 1-minute backstory into episode 6. Ayato. Within one episode, we are told to care about Ayato because of a flashback of his childhood, and are then told to care about him when he fights Toka and then Shinohara in episode 5. Nothing else, I do not give a shit. Do you see the issue here? Once again, Tokyo Ghoul is leaning on its previously mentioned tell rather than show mentality. We aren't shown that we should care about these characters, we're told that they have sad backstories and thus we should care about them. In the manga, characters like Juzo, the entirety of the CCG, the one-eyed girl, Tsukiyama, Dr. Kano, especially Hide, get developed. You see, the biggest issue with Route A's lack of character building can be seen in episode 8 through 12, aka the raid on Anteku. These episodes are relatively run-of-the-mill for Route A at this point. Though you'd expect me to have a lot to say about them, I really don't, and that's because just like the earlier fights within this season, many of these fights lack true substance, which is bad because this is literally the climax of the entire season and season 1. These fights are here because the CCG had to inevitably raid on Anteku and fight the Owl, but these fights lack anything truly deeper. There are only 2 fights within these 4 episodes that carry any true weight, those being the fights involving Shinohara and the fight involving Kaneki and Amon. Kaneki and Amon goes without saying at this point. On the other hand, I actually care about Shinohara this time around, unlike episode 5. This is because his character was actually given screen time. One last point before we wrap up this section on Route A, I want to reiterate that Route A's problem is not that fights simply exist in it. You see, the Tokyo Ghoul manga has many fights, most of which are present within the anime. The issue here is that Route A's fights are constructed with a fucking glass butt plug up their ass. For the amount of time and space they take up, they are shallow and provide almost nothing. The issue is that even in aspiring to be its own story, Route A used so much from the manga that it shoots itself in the foot by keeping that connection, and in removing too much from the manga, it creates an incoherent, rushed, and sloppily glued together mess of a story that simply acts as a highlight reel of some of the manga's best fights and reveals. If you've only watched the anime, then I really don't want to spoil this version of events any more than I have so far, but just know that if I had to rate Route A, I give it like a fucking 3, and I would easily give the manga a solid 8. But for everything I've already said, I want you to forget the fights. I want you to forget the jumbled plot and the lack of character and world building, because Route A's true biggest problem is botching the end of Tokyo Ghoul. This isn't subjective at all. This has nothing to do with your preference towards the ending of the anime versus the manga. You see, Piero decided that after creating their own fanfic for season 2, they would then go on to adapt the entirety of Ri by following the manga. It's time to close the book on Route A. And let me just say, that was a fucking dumpster fire. I read the entire 78 latter chapters of Tokyo Ghoul in one day. I've been recording for 40 fucking minutes. I am exhausted and my brain does not work right now. But ladies and gentlemen, that is about everything I have to say about Tokyo Ghoul. If you're really curious about Ri, the best way to sum it up is that it essentially has the same problems as season 1, mostly in the pacing department. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I've been King Jaber, and this has been how Studio Piero ruined Tokyo Ghoul. Thank you for watching.